Hello, I'm the True Wise Gamer, giving off my vast knowledge so you may understand games a bit better. This review will be a double feature that will feature the review of, remake of the review of Legacy of Darkness while combining with the review of Lament of Innocence. Thus the name I made for this review, Lament of Darkness, which already feels like a Castlevania game anyway. Though why remaster the Curse of Darkness review? Well, simple, that video's quality sucked hard. In fact, I need to redo a lot of my videos soon enough, and this one wasn't good enough to skew some more streamlining my thoughts on that game to a more concise and easier understanding of that game, since that video was bloated with too many thoughts that went nowhere and ranting on them with no particular purpose either. I should also mention that I will be handling this review a little weird, that I'll be handling the new game, or Lament of Innocence. Then, after that one, I'll go into Curse of Darkness and compare the two games while contrasting on which one's better, though I've already know which one is. So, in any case, let's begin with the review of Lament of Innocence and Curse of Darkness. Lament of Innocence begins with a long cutscene that explains the backstory of, well, not much, though it will only play an importance about near the end. Yeah, basically it's supposed to explain a bit of Leon, our main character here, that he's actually after a vampire named Walter who kidnapped Sarah, his betrothed, and leaving the Crusades to rescue her. Once he gets there, he meets up with the alchemist Ronaldo, who's here because due to his family being killed by his daughter who was turned by Walter and now sells stuff to heroes to help them on their journey. Though this is actually more of an excuse of why we have to pay him for stuff than other games, but still don't like it. I'm sorry, I never let that go. I never accepted that when a game has a shop and they don't make a good reason why we have to pay them still, even though they would be okay by this point to just give us it. Anyway, Ronaldo's not such a jerk as he does actually give us a weapon due to Leon not wanting to take a weapon from his work cause that would be wrong for some reason. And besides, he would find a weapon there anyway, so why bother? And the weapon he is actually giving is the Vampire Killer. That will be the most used weapon of the Belmonts. Or the Belmondos in this case, since, yeah, the Japanese name is actually Belmondo, since it's actually a reference to the actor. I know, it's always fun to know that. We also learn that Walter is kind of a jerk, since he actually likes to make someone actually go and kill his big minions to actually progress. Since he's mostly bored and just wants to actually make it interesting for himself when, well, we actually kill him and we actually soon find him and he actually just gives us Sarah. That was easy. Though we also learn that he actually sired her into a vampire and will soon turn to one if they don't kill him fast enough. But that's impossible since, due to his power, it's actually protecting him, and the only thing that would allow for Leon to even get past it is to complete the whip. The only way to complete the Vampire Killer, it requires a tainted soul to allow it to be able to do stuff, but just allow it to mostly just destroy creatures of the night. Sarah overhears this and willingly gives her soul to Leon so he can stop Walter and make sure this never happens again. After some more climbing, we find Walter and directly kill him. You think the game would be over and that would actually start the legacy of the Belmont clan and we would maybe make Walter into Dracula later, but no, it's not. Yeah, you'd think it would be over because suddenly Death's here, and okay, somebody's gotta really explain the bloody hell out of Death, because how is he a character in the series and serves under Dracula? Because I would love to know. Then this other guy comes in whose name's Matthias, and who is he again? Like I stated, there are some things in the intro that's only important till the tail end, and this guy was mentioned. And I didn't mention him earlier was mostly because he wasn't important. Till now. Well, basically, his wife died, and after that he went a little insane. He basically wants to say screw God and have an eternal life because you have to say screw him more. Yeah, kind of insane, like I said. But also a little insane when you remember that Death has been able to resurrect people before, so I'm just saying, why can't he just resurrect his wife? Whatever, it doesn't matter. He then offers Leon to join him, though you were the direct cause of his love's death, so I don't see that working well. But that hardly matters either, as Matthias just fucks off. Yeah, and we won't see him for 300 years until Trevor Belmont. Yeah, so what happens now? We just face Death. And his boss fight's annoying as a... just annoying. But whatever, we win the day and our journey starts to start the legacy of the Belmont clan. As you'll have noticed, the story is very simple until the end, where it kinda comes out of nowhere and just exists now for some reason. Other than its ties to the Castlevania universe, even then it feels tenuous. Honestly, the story feels half-baked and unfinished in some regard, as we never really get anything more about Matthias, as the game hints his family knows a lot about alchemy, but it really adds nothing to the story. Or hell, even Sarah and her connection to Leon, though it's still a better romance than anything 13 had to offer. In fact, we learn very little about every other character except Ronaldo, and he only appears in this game. It's just that the story feels half-baked, and just anything worth value of this story is not really that important. I mean, yes, it does explain the origin of the Belmonts and how they started hunting monsters, but that could be explained anywhere else. In the end, the story just exists to waste time and not allow for anything really interesting. This can actually be tied to the gameplay in some regard. The gameplay is a simple hack and slash that really gets dull quickly. You only have access to the power of the whip that can actually gain new moves as you progress. How? I'm not sure, I honestly couldn't tell. With addition to the Belmont trademark, the sub-weapons that allow you to use items to help fight against the monsters. You got your standard knife, axe, holy water, as those are the only ones useful, though I would say also that holy water is the only one I used at the end since it was that useful. As I stated earlier, the problem with the combat is that it's not interesting enough to carry the game to the end. You only have the whip as your only weapon that never really gets stronger, only gets new moves. I kind of thought that at some point as we progress, as it got drenched in the blood of monsters, it would actually grow stronger, and that's how it's actually getting the new moves as well. But no, that's not how it works at all. Just gets new moves. Maybe it's only because it's showing a combo meter, it kind of makes you think that you want to have more combat or more things to use in combat. By the end, I realized that even the heavy attack would kill most foes easily as it dealt the most damage and also allowed for a wider hit that would just decimate most foes in 1 or 2 hits. And that's what combat devolves into. Hit until they die and then progress. That's it. I would also mention the puzzles, but it all comes down to this: actually get the thing that actually allows you to progress, rather than just having a puzzle here that actually makes you think. I mean, when the puzzle of a room is to push a statue into place, then it's not really a puzzle. It's just saying it is. And the game will just keep wasting your time on nonsense that's either pointless or annoying. Like those dark rooms that need you to platform around with no real risk. That's just dumb. There is literally no need for this room here. And I hate these rooms with a passion. I would mention the boss battles, but as I stated, or I think I did, these fights are too easy. Like, wow, too easy. I pretty much did all of the bosses on one go, and the only one I didn't have a first go on was this guy here, and that's just because I didn't understand his gimmick. I need to at least be fair to the game at least. The game doesn't look bad, I actually like the style of the game, but the character models feel a bit off, as though the models were about to be finished, like getting that fine-tuned, but just didn't. I also did really like the environments, that they did put effort to make them look unique to each part, though I will say that didn't make them polished enough, so that halfway through of them, you're just seeing the same assets over and over again, making the level feel longer than they actually were. I would mention the monster designs, but most of them were very unmemorable, except the bosses, which again, they look like fine, but again, in fact, the biggest challenge for me was to actually find what the hell I was supposed to do to get into the boss room. See, sometimes the boss requires you to actually do something before the boss actually allows you to fight them, like turning off the pipes to get into the boss room, or finding the bell to actually start the boss battle. It's just wasting your time rather than being engaging and letting you just progress. And I know I'm gonna get someone who's gonna say, well, it's a Metroidvania, of course it's going to do that. I mean, yeah, in some regard you're right, but in that same way, isn't it supposed to also feel natural? That you're supposed to find your way to the boss rather than actually finding the boss, then having to go back to find something so you can actually progress. And the biggest example of the game just wasting your time and doing this nonsense was when the game needs you to basically turn a stone slab around to make it a 4 instead of a 6. So instead of flipping the slab like any other normal sane human being was, they have to use this device to actually make it flip, then actually going back to open it. Are you kidding me? That made me sad that this game was bad, since there's no saving a game that was not even respecting your time to do this nonsense. And if somebody says it's magic, really? Really? In the end, this game was a dull, boring experience that just made me hate everything by the end. The story is barely there for anyone to enjoy. The gameplay is not there enough to be actually enjoyable. The music's always good. I didn't mention it because it's fine. It's not the best, but you know what I mean. It does its job. So what the heck do you want me to say then? Just ignore this game. Now that just leaves the other game on the PS2, that being Curse of Dark. This game was actually made after a Lament of Innocence, and it really shows how much of a better game this could have been. Oh, it's still bad, it's just less bad than Lament, but still enough to say that I don't like it. So let's quickly get the story out of the way of this one. This takes place a little after the first game, Curse of Dracula, and Dracula is pretty much dead now. And we have the new character here of Hector, this guy, who actually used to work for Dracula until he left due to Dracula really wanting to just kill humanity outright instead of just starting anew. There was also Isaac, who also worked under Dracula. He was set to actually kill Hector, but during that time while they were away, Trevor Belmont actually killed, with his crew of course, killed Dracula during that time. Some time actually passed with Isaac, as he actually later on found Hector and killed his wife during that time. Thus Hector begins his quest to chase Isaac to get his revenge. They soon meet up and we think they were going to fight, but Isaac's like, nah, you stupid idiot. You think you can fight me after losing so much of your power? He then kind of screws off. To explain the loss of power, they are Devil Forge Masters, people who are able to make weapons and demons alike. Though you think he would just keep the Forge Master stuff just because he's, for sale, but Though strangely, in fact, throughout the game, Isaac left behind a lot of pre-made demons for us to use, just to make sure that we're strong enough to actually fight him. This is mostly due to his hang-up about feeling weaker than Hector, just so you know. It's established early on, but just so you know. During our chase of him, we actually meet Julia, who's Isaac's sister, and kind of looks like his old wife, though I'm a little confused because I thought they were going to pull the Julia was actually Rosalie, but no, they didn't. So I'm just saying, why even bother to make her look like Rosalie to begin with? Just saying. She also asked us to stop his madness since he's gone too crazy at this point. We also meet someone named Zed, who's talking to this other guy who I'll go into a bit later, but just note, I'm going to use it for something funny. Basically, he just tells us that he's trying to revive Dracula. How, in particular, is a mystery to me. Though, strangely enough, we also meet Trevor Belmont himself in here and get into a fight with him, but it really hardly matters as we're not the one he's looking for, as he's looking for Isaac as well. After a bit more exploring, we actually find something down below the castle, that being a Dullahan that actually contains a lot of souls. After killing the Dullahan, it actually releases a lot of souls, while Isaac, while being alone with Trevor, takes a stab at him to get its blood as Dracula's castle rises as Isaac waits inside. After more fights after fights after fights, we actually reach Isaac and begin our battle with him, which is kind of bullshit in all honesty, which I'll get to in a moment. Strangely enough, it does what Lament of Innocence does. That Zed comes in out of nowhere, just feels out of whack. Zed was deaf. Why? I'm not entirely sure. Well, I mean, yeah, I know his plan was to actually revive Dracula using one of the Devil Forge Masters as a way of reviving him since they carry a bit of his magic in him. So, could be used as an anchor point to bring him back. But he mentions that Hector thwarted the curse for some reason, and yeah, the curse. The curse was something in the game that was a thing, but I have no idea of it. It just feels like it just didn't matter at all. And even Hector winning was not even a loss to him, as he'll just use Isaac instead as a host. Quickly even defeating Death, we actually go meet up with Dracula and defeat him as well too, since his body wasn't actually able to handle the full power of darkness, and the weakened Isaac was able to aid in his defeat of Dracula. As the castle collapsed, Julia rescues us and the day is saved as they walk out together into Julia's shop. If you'll have noticed, the story is about the same length as Lament of Innocence, but gameplay-wise, this game's a bit longer than it should have had any rights to be, but still. In fact, it still suffered from the issue of Lament of Innocence being too long for its own good, being with not a lot of engagement that are actually engaging enough. In fact, this game's pretty much the same game, except now with a few more bells and whistles. Like, for example, now you have actual multiple weapons now that can actually play a bit different, though not that much, and it's a bit more interesting combat-wise, but honestly would have worked if it wasn't so long. But that's due to because the designer is not making the maps more ironically Mario Metroidvania, meaning the levels are longer and more interconnected. The game's issue, as like Lament, is pretty much the same. The levels are too long with nothing really much interesting happening, but also they stop being interesting halfway through since they are needlessly long. I wouldn't have mind so much, but the game keeps making the levels longer and longer. In fact, if maybe they reduce the game by half, or at least some of the levels by a little more, like 25%, I'm pretty sure the game would have been better. Like I said before, it's a Metroidvania-ish. Like, yeah, there's a direction you need to go to, but you need to get this one thing beforehand to actually progress, which is something I don't mind too much since there's actual teleportation now that actually allows you to just quickly get to where you want to, but that still doesn't make the levels any less long. I still want to say that they look fine, it's just that they reuse a lot of assets. That's not actually the issue, it's more of that I'm just sick and tired of waiting for something more interesting to happen. I should also mention that the game is about the same length as God of War, and I mention it because I felt like it needed to be mentioned since they are very similar. Sorta. As I'm also comparing this to also Lament, so you know. As I wanted to say that God of War at least respects your time and making sure that they are making your way through the game with new fights and maybe new weapons to keep you engaged, with also story points. I do want to at least praise the demon mechanic, or as I would like to call it, SMT, but a lot more boring. As I mentioned before, weapons can actually play a little different, but the reason why you want to actually use different weapons is because it's that they allow you to actually evolve your demons to better and stronger demons, which do level up, but evolving them is a better option most times than not. Though, then again, that's from there's always one particular demon that's better off to use than any other demon, which is this guy right here, since his power allows him to actually deal off a lot more damage than most foes. Though, it is still needing to be careful to watch their health, since their health is also their special moves meter for some reason, which I never understood why do games do that still, I'll never know. And at some point, you just want to just stop fighting most fights, since they're just another time waster that's not really there to actually be interesting. Just there to stop your progression, or at least make you want to stop, but rather than actually being interesting. I do need to also mention the Julia shop thing, since, okay, this is something I'm just gonna mention this now. Why do shops need you to pay them? No, I know, mechanics and whatnot. But I mean, like, story-wise, most times than not, they don't make any sense. I mean, like, think about the story for a moment. It is told to us that Julia wants us to stop her brother, but she does not help us in any real manner, like give us potions and stuff, since she wants us to beat him, right? Wouldn't giving us all the potions we want as a way to help us be more helpful than letting us store demons with her, since that's the only thing she does ever? Though actually what's more frustrating with her is the voice acting. Yeah, I haven't mentioned yet that the voice acting of these two games are okay, but I don't know, there's something like wrong with it too, if you catch my drift. The lines themselves are fine, it's just that the actors were forced to say these lines in a weird manner. And the one who did Julia is just awful. I'm sorry, she's just awful. And she's not even a voice actor. I think this was actually her first role in anything. Though, let's actually go somewhere else now, since I'm a little annoyed about that and I don't want to rant more on that. Let's actually talk about Saint Germain. Yes, I haven't mentioned it because he wasn't important to the plot, like, at all. He was not. If you tell me he was important, he wasn't. Period. Now, of course, you're probably wondering, why am I mentioning him? Well, simple. He's a JoJo reference. In fact, one could argue this game is a JoJo reference in its entirety. Yes, I am going conspiracy theory on this bitch, because there is no possible way this is crazy. I am not going crazy on this because it makes so much sense. I mean, like, think about this for a moment. Okay, Hector is Jonathan. Julia is Irina. Saint Germain's Sepali. Zed is the Chinese guy. Isaac is Dracula, then also Dio, because that makes sense. And heck, Trapper Belmont is actually this guy. Yeah, I'll say it. But I've been holding it off for a little bit, and I now need to answer it. Which one's better? If I had to really choose, it would have to be Curse of Darkness. Only because it's more streamlined and more knows what the fuck it's doing and not actively wasting your time on meaningless puzzles. Curse of Darkness is still not that good, but it's still better than Lament of Innocence, which should be clear. But in any case, that's all for today. See you next time in whatever.